Hello, everybody. Excited to be back with you guys on my LinkedIn Live. And I have a special guest today. We've been talking about leadership, more career development. And man, we have so many people coming into the workforce, even here at Vaco. Mackenzie Harris, one of our very
Hello.
own, is joining me today. We're talking tips for young professionals in the workforce, which I think is very tangible today for anybody who's coming out of college, not sure what they're going to do, unsure of the market right now. They're hearing all this negativity outside themselves, in their brain, whatever's going on. And Mackenzie and I are going to walk us through on kind of how to do it. So, Mackenzie, welcome.
Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. It's a beautiful day in Nashville, and I'm excited to chat.
Awesome. Mackenzie, real quick, how long have you been at Vaco? Tell us where you went to school. Give us a little 30, 45-second snippet of you and who you are.
Yeah, so I graduated from Auburn University, War Eagle, about a year ago, and I've been with Vaco ever since. So I'm just under a year now, and it has been a blast. I love it. I love working here. I love the people, and it's been a trip.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I am not an Auburn Tiger, but my brother-in-law, I have family there, so I cheer for. I'm more Eagle more so than Roll Tide, so that works,
It's
right,
what
for
I
this
like to hear.
conversation. Okay, awesome, awesome. Well, hey, so you're just freshly out of this, looking for a job. Talk about kind of you doing that. Some things that if you had to go do it again, what were some things maybe you would change about it? What were give us some tips on the people that are right now in the middle of this in their senior year, don't have a job yet. What do you tell them?
I mean, it's scary, right? Like
Yeah.
graduating college, you're like, okay, what am I going to do? I mean, some
Yeah.
people have a plan, but some people don't, which is totally fine. And, I found myself in a season last year in March, and I was like, what am I going to do? Like, what do I even want to do? I went to school, I got a degree, that's just like the standard plan that you're supposed to follow. And I just remember feeling like lost, confused. I was super scared, stressed out. Like I was filled with like crippling anxiety. I would wake up and I was just like, what am I going to do next? And I think, I began my job search and I was just, mass applying to jobs. Like I knew I wanted to work with people and I knew I wanted to find a job that I could be competitive with. And I think, we all kind of have these ideas when we're in that season of college where we're like, okay, like I think I want to do this, I think I want to do that. But I think when you start that journey and that search, it's like really important to find a few key ideas and goals that you kind of want to align yourself with and find a job where you can kind of have those goals in your everyday career. Um, and it's such a scary time. Like, and I know we were talking about this before we kind of hopped on. It's like a lot of people will just kind of go back, get their master's, which is great if that's something you actually want to do. And I feel like a lot of the time it's just something we do out of fear. We're like, okay,
Yeah.
like I don't want to leave my college town. Like I don't want to leave the people that I've been with for the past 4 years. And I think what's important when you start searching is maybe just starting the initial search, like I said, with some goals that you have in mind, some things that you like to do, and kind of find a company that you can align yourself with those goals that you found and that you align with.
Yeah, and I think too, Mackenzie, you said this too. It's also really important to find people in that industry that are doing that job right now. So I don't have a ton of people that reach out to me about talking about my career, what I've done, but anytime they do, I answer them and I spend some time with them on the phone. And so I would really also encourage young people to reach out to professionals that are currently in the workforce because we all want to help. We really, really do. And so I think the anxiety and the fear you're talking about really comes down to the unknown, right? Because nobody likes change, right? And they're not sure what's going to happen. So when they're not sure what's going to happen, when they're not in control, where do they go to? Swirl, swirl, swirl. And so I think just the positivity of like enjoying the experience and then working the plan. What you talked about is setting out some goals because listen, I'm a huge fan of school and education, but when you go back to school without a plan, that turns into an expensive hobby, right?
Right.
And so then you're going to be the same position 12 months later if it's a small graduate program. Now going to med school, law school, that's a different deal. Obviously, it's more career driven and set on that. But talk about it. Talk about so you found a job. Talk about your finding the job and
Yeah.
interviewing and perspective of like, hey, what are some things that when you kind of hey, okay, I had some initial interviews, had some odd job offers. Talk about that process and maybe some things that you would have changed about it, or some things that you would have done differently, and what was successful for you.
Absolutely. Well, I think when I first started my job search, like I said, I was so scared and I was mass applying. I was like, what do I even want to do?
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I really leaned into the process of interviewing and meeting people from different companies, like you said, kind of networking through the interview process, that I realized what the right job was for me. And actually, before I accepted my position with Vaco, I had already had another job. And I think that's something that I regret the most is I had interviewed with that company and it was a similar type role, but I had this feeling, right? I was like, something about this doesn't feel right for me, and when you're in an interview, if you're connecting with those people that you're going to be surrounding yourself with, hopefully for the next few years of your life.
Yeah.
I just had this feeling. I was like, like these people are great, but I don't know that I'm great for them. And they offered me the job. I accepted because I was so scared. I was like, okay, I need to have a job before I graduate. And if I don't, everyone's going to judge me. I'm going to be going back home with my parents, which are great, love them. But like, I wanted to do something and tie my name to a career. And I accepted it out of fear, which I regret. I regret that so
Yeah.
much. I mean, that's not right to the company. That's not right to yourself. And I think I just wish I had kind of leaned into that process a bit more and recognized that gut feeling I had wasn't necessarily fear. It was just like that company wasn't the right fit for me.
Yeah. Mackenzie, you've said it both times of just anxiety, fear, stress, not sure. We need to do a separate LinkedIn on like what drives that, right? And
Oh
so,
yeah.
and just the social, just fear and anxiety of kind of making a misstep. Talk about that a little bit, as far as, because that's what it comes down to, right? So when people have fear or they're nervous, it's the unknown, it's the what if game, right? Well, what if
Right.
this happens? And the reality is, I always tell this all the time, like, well, you go on a job interview, or what's the worst thing that's going to happen? People are so nervous about it. I'm like, you just don't get the job. Like, nobody's
Right.
coming and doing anything less than that, or anything
Yeah.
more than that, right? And so I think the more people you put fear in perspective, and you put fear in a box like we do everything else, then fear just becomes, it's not as elevated in this big, big cloud that sits over us. Talk about that a little bit, where, okay, you've gotten a year in, you're a year past, you look back, right? 1 year perspective backwards. You've been here a year. Just how has your perspective changed about fear? And you're like, God, that was so, you laugh now, but like,
It's
it was
so
so,
funny.
it was so monumental a year ago, and now you look back and you're like, God, that was nothing. And now, no, but the reality is, now how do you take that experience and learn from it and compound it? But fear just moves, right, to different situations, and how can you
Move
kind of
somewhere
maybe change
else.
that going forward?
Yeah, I think it's so funny you say that. So I remember I remember my first day, I was like, gosh, so I deal specifically in the IT space, right? I don't come from an IT background. I spend all day talking to developers, like project managers that probably have like 20 years of experience, and they're talking to a
Yeah.
girl who has like barely a year, right? And I remember I was like calling these people and I was like, I'm so scared right now. I was like, they're going to know. They're going to know I don't belong. And I think looking back on it now, I'm like, I wish I had just leaned into that, like I said, and accepted that I don't know anything. And I'm not going to know anything for quite some time. And knowledge is ever changing. You're never going to have all the
Nope.
knowledge in the world. And I wish I had just utilized that fear in the beginning to push me forward and just ask the questions, like not out of fear, but out of curiosity.
That's right.
And in any job, like not just in IT, you're not going to know things when you first start. And even I talk to my colleagues who are 5 years in and they're still like, yeah, I have no idea, but I'm going to learn. I want to learn.
Yeah.
And I wish, looking back on it now, I've gotten a lot better about utilizing that fear in other places, like using it as curiosity almost. Like, okay, like I'm scared, but what's a question I can ask to maybe become a bit more knowledgeable on the subject? I think that's so important. Just
Yeah.
use your fear as a driver, lean into it. It's great.
Well, I said this before, is like, cockiness and confidence doesn't really sell, right? Humility, vulnerability does. And so when you're in the midst of that, of being new, I tell this to anybody right now who's listening that's a year or less into their career, that is a huge tool right now. to like you had the excuse of, hey, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I want to learn. Can you help me do this? And I think people just in general don't like to ask for help because it's a
Right.
it's a it's a puts them in a position of helplessness, maybe, or just the world of like everybody loves to act like they have it all together, which you, Mackenzie, I don't.
I
And,
don't.
and, and you're telling me right now you don't. So like if the more you realize that we're all trying to figure this whole thing out, no matter what level it is, from a CEO all the way down, everybody has self-doubt, right? And so when you realize that as an individual, it's a total game changer, right? That you're like, okay, I'm not sure of this, but how do we go about this? And I'm like, I don't know. Let me ask some questions. So let me go find out somebody who's already been there, done that, right? And so utilizing resources around it and saying, hey, I'm new, not sure what to do here. Can you help me out? Can you show me? Or hey, what would you do in this situation? Like that's how you turn a
It's
fear into like the
key.
curiosity. It's so awesome, right? To totally pivot from that. Um, awesome. Let's Mackenzie, you're here, you're working at Vaco, couple weeks in, you're nervous. What are some advice to some people that are coming in, not to Vaco per se, but just to their job for the first time? What are some things you're like, hey, I would really recommend you doing this when you're new to the organization or right out of school? What are some things that you did or that you maybe didn't do but would recommend to do?
So I think the biggest thing that has really helped me is getting to know the people around me. Because like you said, you talk a lot about like, hey, you need to ask the questions for the people around you. You totally do. And I mean, Vaco's awesome too because everyone here is tenured. They've been here for 5+ years, which is great for me. And I think when I first started, I recognized that as a resource. Instead of being like overwhelmed by like, oh my gosh, I'm the new girl, like I don't know anything, they're gonna judge me. I was like, I've got like people here who have been doing this for so long. They're good at what they do. Like I need
Mm-hmm.
to utilize them as resources. And not only that, but leaning into them on the tough days, like building a support group because in any job you're gonna have really bad days and you're gonna have really good days. And now I've got this crew of people behind me who support me and lift me up and teach me things. I mean, that's the best thing I could ask for in any company I join is just like getting to know the people around you, getting to know their lives, what they do. And like relationships don't just automatically happen. You got to build them. And it takes time. And you're not just going to, even though I've been here a year, I mean, I'm still learning a ton of stuff about the people I work with. And I love it. Like these
Yeah,
people are awesome. I want to know them
for
so that we
sure.
can help each other out.
Yeah, you you made it right. Relationships don't happen over time, and it takes it's honestly you build relationships over experiences, right? Whether that's a work experience or personal experience or whatever that may be, is spending time with each other in different settings. But I would say too, if you're new and you have an opportunity to volunteer or attend an event, get involved in some kind of if somebody who's tenured there say, "Hey, I have a nonprofit I'm a part of. I'm looking for 3 or 4 volunteers to come help me." Like, go get to know that
Right.
person, step
Yeah,
out,
it's
right?
fun. Yeah. I
And
think, and
so,
that's, you got to do it. It's like
yeah,
after hours, you're like, I don't want to stay after work to go to dinner. Like, I'm tired. No, you should go.
yeah, you gotta for sure. I think it's super important to kind of get to know those people, and then also too, it just builds some trust. And then also too, people are like, "Hey, Mackenzie, I didn't want to tell you this in the front end because I didn't know you super well, but now I do, and I want to make sure you know this about me or I know this about you." You know what I mean? So just you're not gonna totally get somebody's honest opinion. People are gonna be guarded,
Takes
right?
time.
Takes
Right.
time.
Yeah.
No, for sure. What so Mackenzie, give me a couple things that you started at Vaco. What are some things that maybe you would do differently that you're like, I really messed up here, or hey, don't do this, or maybe it's all the way back to like starting when you're in college looking for a job. Would you have done something different 2 years out, 1 year out? Like, just what are some 1 or 2 things that you're like, man, I messed up here, or I would do this differently?
I think when I first started at Vaco, and I guess this can go scholastically or academically or even in your hobbies, it's like I'm a very big picture individual. Like I'm so focused on that end goal that I don't really care about the steps that I need to take to get there. I'm like, all right, like I'm just going to do this. Now,
Mm-hmm.
you got to recognize that you need to pick out some small achievements that are going to get you to where you need to be. Like you need to be focusing on those smaller goals to get to those big picture goals. And I think when I first started at Vaco, I was so focused on, you know, getting to where I needed to be that I didn't I didn't focus on the specific steps to get there. And there are a ton of books that talk about this. I think Atomic Habits does. I think just focusing on realistic, everyday goals that you can hit to get to your bigger goals. Like, I think that's so important, whether that be in a career. It's easier in my job because we have metrics, but like in your hobbies, if you work out, it's like, okay, well, is there a specific weight I want to hit? Well, okay, what should I be doing every day to get there? I
Yeah.
think that's so important.
Mackenzie, it's John Acuff's a guy I follow, and he's a big goal setter, talking about goals. I think he's got a book called finishing ahead, or finishing the goal. And the reason people they set goals and don't finish them is because the goal is too obtain. They feel like they set a goal like, oh, I'm making this up, I want to run a marathon, and I've never run before. You're like, maybe start out with a 5K. Maybe start out with just, hey, let's have a goal of running a mile, right? And so, because when you start setting goals that you're accomplishing, there's a sense of accomplishment that happens internally with you, that you're like, wow, yes. Like, you need some to start just checking off, right? And then all of a sudden you're like, maybe I can go run a 10K. And then over time, I'm hitting that marathon, right? This isn't something I'm waking up and getting out of bed and saying I'm going to do. And so I think breaking things down into small, tangible goals is really, really helpful for anybody who's, there's a reason why the New Year's resolutions don't work, is because there's so
big.
Yeah. And so you'll learn this, Mackenzie, with me as we do goal setting, is like, so many people bring me goals and says, my question is, well, how are you going to do that? I see the goal. How are you going to get there? And if you just say, oh, I want to do this, I'm like, but what's the plan? What are the metrics? How are you going to get to where you're going? And if you don't have that plan, you will 100% deviate.
You're not going to make it.
Yeah, right? You'll deviate from it for sure.
Then you'll just get more of that fear and that anxiety. And I think when we're in college, we're like, okay, end goal, let's get a job. Yep. Right? So easy to say, but like, okay, well, how many jobs do I need to apply to every day? Or more importantly, like, what do I want to do? Right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, I think the one thing that if I was back in college that I would tell people that I did some of this, but I wouldn't apply to any jobs. I would just network like crazy of the professionals that do what I wanted to do, and meet them, take them to lunch, or beg them to buy my lunch if I'm broke in college, and they will. But I think that's the bigger deal, is just networking through. And now, there wasn't LinkedIn when I was in college, right? I mean, now people in college can directly message me and get access to me. I mean, obviously my email is pretty out there too, if you really wanted to find that. But I mean, the game has totally changed on finding a job, in my opinion.
Different.
Yeah. So people just need to take initiative and, hey, I want to be in this career, or this is what I want to do, and go talk to somebody doing it. Now, if it's something that's high profile or in sports, or you may have to go work for free for a little bit, right?
Right.
Or go do a free internship in the summer. Like, I mean, if somebody came to me, I was like, and I was having my own business or doing whatever, and they're like, hey, I want to work for free for you. I'm like, can I shadow you and teach me what to do? And I'm like, wow, I would be overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, okay, this guy or gal is like, means something, getting after it.
They're serious.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the access to the talent right now, I mean, you can message anybody on LinkedIn now. How to message somebody and the crafting of the message is another, probably
that's another LinkedIn Live that we'll do.
Yeah. It's short and sweet, right? Here's why I'm reaching out. Can I have 10 minutes of your time on the phone? It's not 2 paragraphs. So real quick, cliff notes of that. But I think that's my biggest one, Mackenzie. I don't know if you would agree to that, or.
Oh yeah. Well, that's how I got my job at Vaco. That's literally how I ended up here. It's like, I had a friend that was like, oh, you want to go into recruiting? I was like, yeah, like I do. And they were like, oh, hold on. Like, I know a guy at Vaco. Like, you should connect with him. And then I connected with somebody else. And then I connected with somebody else. And I reached out to them. And that's literally how I got my job here. It's amazing, right?
If I recall, I think you had 2 or 3 different connections to us. Brandon Guy here locally, Chris Mann with Morgan Franklin, who's our CEO of our Morgan Franklin group. And I had one more. I had a call from somebody about you too. So there was a lot.
When you want something, you got to get after it, right? Like you said, it's like all those connections help, and it speaks numbers for you as an individual. If you have people that are willing to stick out their necks for you, and it worked. I'm here.
For sure. Mackenzie, one last question for you. So, hey, I know in the last year you've had some trying weeks, I'm sure. right? Because get in this job, I just know I've been there. It's tough, right? Where you have turn downs and candidates are, we deal in the world of people, right? And people are consistently crazy at times.
Sometimes.
What are some things that you've done to say, hey, maybe get out of the job, you know, to take yourself out of it and some free time? How do you kind of blow off steam? What would you recommend, or give you some thoughts to that?
Well, I guess when I first started, it was so easy for me to really give everything I had to the job. Like just put in the after hours, like go crazy with it. And I mean, when you're young, you got to put in the after hours. You
Yeah.
really do. But I think what I did do, which was harmful to me and my mental health, was I set aside what I did, like my hobbies, and I'm really into working out. Like that is my thing. Like that is the one thing I get to do that I
Yeah.
love, and I can leave everything at the door, my
Yep.
crazy days. And I think when I first started, I stopped doing that. And I think that really had an effect. You know, when those bad days came, I rode them out and I like
Yeah.
let it get in my head. And I think the biggest piece of advice I could have is if you're starting a new job, you're just starting, a different transition, keep your hobbies and your activities that you like to do because it'll
Yeah.
keep you sane in the long run. Just set aside maybe like 30 minutes a day, an hour a day to do what you really like to do.
Yeah. Get a routine, stick to it,
Yes.
right? Working out's consistent. Is as an adult, you're not as active, which is obvious, but I think that's one thing that definitely matters on the hobbies, or pick up a hobby, right?
Right.
I mean, there's so many things to get into and do. I think that's super important on that end. So awesome advice, Mackenzie. This has been
Yeah.
fantastic. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
joining me, and hopefully you've given some tips and some thoughts to everybody that's looking for a job. And Mackenzie, give me your email address if you need it. If you're
Mackenzie
brand
at
new,
Vaco, y'all. Come join me. We want more people on the team. I'd love to work with everyone. I'm happy to
we
help you find a job as well.
for sure we are hiring, and look forward to seeing everybody back in a couple weeks with more career leadership development type work type things to chat about. Mackenzie, you've been fantastic. Thanks so much for today.
Thank you so
All
much.
right, talk soon.